Welcome to What Is, where we take the complex, the misunderstood, and the downright mysterious, and break them down into something you can actually explain at a dinner party without sounding like you spent too much time in the basement wearing a tinfoil hat. Today we're looking up, way up. We're talking about three little letters that have launched 1,000 movies, a million internet arguments, and at least one very questionable History Channel series. We're talking about UFOs. But before we get into the flying and the unidentified bits, let's clear the air. If you're here for stories about rectal exams in the Nevada desert, or secret treaties signed between President Eisenhower and a 6-foot lizard person, you're in the wrong place. We're sticking to the facts, the science, and the very real history of things in the sky that we just can't quite explain. So let's start with the basics. What actually is a UFO? The acronym stands for Unidentified Flying Object. Simple, right? But the term has become a victim of its own success. In the public consciousness, UFO is synonymous with alien spaceship. But in the world of science and the military, a UFO is exactly what it says on the tin. It's an object, it's flying, and we don't know what it is yet. The term was first coined in 1952 by the United States Air Force. Specifically, it's credited to Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, who was the first head of Project Blue Book, the government's official investigation into these sightings. Before Ruppelt, people called them flying saucers or flying discs, but Ruppelt found these terms restrictive and a bit silly. He wanted something more clinical. He wanted a term that covered everything from a cigar-shaped craft to a glowing orb of light. He wanted UFO. And here is the most important thing you need to understand about the definition. It's entirely subjective. A UFO is anything flying and unidentified. It could be a plane to a jungle tribe, or a bird casting a huge shadow. It's flying, it's unidentified, it's a UFO. If you see a drone and you don't know what a drone is, guess what? You've spotted a UFO. If a sensor on a billion-dollar fighter jet picks up a glitch that looks like a craft, until that glitch is explained, it's a UFO. It's a category of ignorance, not a category of biology. Now let's talk about what a UFO is not, because this is where the comedy of errors usually begins. A UFO is not, by definition, extraterrestrial. It's not a declaration that physics has been broken, and it's certainly not a confirmation that the truth is out there. Most of the time, the truth is actually much more boring. Throughout the history of the 20th century, roughly 90 to 95% of all UFO sightings were eventually identified. They were weather balloons. They were the planet Venus, which, fun fact, is the leading cause of glowing orb reports because it's incredibly bright and stays low on the horizon. They were temperature inversions, where layers of warm and cold air trap light or radar signals, creating ghost images. They were top secret military projects, which is the great irony of the Cold War. Half the people reporting UFOs in the 50s and 60s were actually seeing U-2 spy planes or the SL-71 Blackbird. The government was happy to let people believe in aliens because it was a great cover for the fact they were testing planes that looked like they were from the future. However, that leaves the other 5 to 10%, the unsolved cases, the ones that keep pilots awake at night and make scientists scratch their heads. Let's look at some of the real, factual examples. We start in World War II. Pilots on both sides of the conflict, Allied and Axis, began reporting strange, glowing orbs that would follow their planes. They called them Foo Fighters. No, not the band, although Dave Grohl did steal the name. These weren't just lights in the sky. They were objects that seemed to toy with the aircraft, matching their speed and performing maneuvers that seemed impossible for the tech of the 1940s. At the time, the Americans thought they were a secret German weapon. The Germans thought they were a secret American weapon. The Japanese thought they were a secret Soviet weapon. It turns out nobody owned them. Post-war investigations suggest that they might have been St. Elmo's fire, a form of plasma discharge from the wings of planes, or perhaps a psychological phenomenon caused by the intense stress and fatigue of combat. But to this day, some of those specific Foo Fighter accounts remain officially unexplained. Fast forward to July 1952, the Washington Flap. For 2 consecutive weekends, radar operators at National Airport and Andrews Air Force Base in DC tracked a group of unidentified objects. These weren't just blips, they were moving at speeds of up to 7,000 miles per hour. Pilots were scrambled. They reported seeing glowing lights that would vanish the moment the jets got close. The city went into a panic. It was the height of the Cold War. People thought the Soviets had developed gravity-defying sources. The Air Force held the largest press conference since World War II to calm everyone down. Their explanation? A temperature inversion. They claimed that a layer of warm air had reflected ground-based radar signals, creating false targets, and that the pilots were simply seeing stars or city lights distorted by the atmosphere. Was that the truth? Many of the radar operators and pilots involved said absolutely not. They knew the difference between a radar glitch and a hard target. But officially, the case was closed. It's a perfect example of how the UFO label transitions from a mystery to an explained phenomenon, even if the explanation feels a bit like a shrug. But let's get into the modern era, because this is where things get really interesting. In 2017, the world changed a little bit. The New York Times published a story revealing a secret Pentagon program called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AATIP. Along with the story, they released 3 videos captured by US Navy pilots. You've probably seen them: the Tic-Tac, the Gimbal, and the GoFast. For the first time, we weren't looking at a blurry photo taken by a farmer in Nebraska. We were looking at multi-sensor data: radar, infrared, and visual, from the most sophisticated military hardware on the planet. In the 2004 Tic-Tac incident, Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Alex Dieterich were on a training mission off the coast of California. They were directed towards an object that had been tracked by the USS Princeton for days. Fravor described a white oblong object, about 40 feet long, with no wings, no rotors, no visible means of propulsion. It was hovering just above the water, causing it to churn. When Fravor got close, the object mirrored his movements. Then, in a blink, it accelerated and vanished. Moments later, the USS Princeton picked it up on radar again. It had traveled 60 miles in less than a minute. To do that, the craft would have to withstand G-forces that would liquefy a human pilot and shred any known airframe. Is it aliens? Well, the Navy didn't say that. They just said it was unidentified. Science, however, likes to look for the mundane answers before jumping to little green men. Let's consider the GoFast video. In the footage, an object appears to be zipping across the ocean at incredible speeds, but when analysts look at the metadata on the screen, the altitude, the angle of the camera, and the speed of the jet, they realized it was an optical illusion called parallax. Imagine you're in your car on the highway. The mountains in the distance seem to move slowly, but the fence posts right next to the car zip by. In the GoFast video, the object was actually very high up and moving relatively slowly. Because the camera was tracking it against the distant water, it looked like it was screaming across the waves. It was likely just a weather balloon or a stray drone. Then there's the pyramid UFOs filmed over the USS Russell in 2019. They look like glowing triangles hovering in the sky. Spooky, right? Except photography experts pointed out an effect called bokeh. When you film a point of light through a night vision lens with a triangular aperture, that light is slightly out of focus. It turns into, well, you've guessed it, a triangle. The UFOs were likely distant stars or commercial aircraft. But even after you debunk the balloons and the bouquet, you're still left with the Tic-Tac. You're still left with the radar data. And that brings us to the biggest question of all. If some of these things are actually craft, and they aren't ours, and they aren't China's or Russia's, whose are they? This leads us to the possibility of alien life. And if we're going to talk about that, we have to talk about a man named Enrico Fermi. Fermi was a Nobel Prize-winning physicist. One day in 1950, while walking to lunch with some colleagues, the conversation turned to UFOs and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. Fermi famously stopped and asked, "But where is everybody?" This is the Fermi Paradox. Here's the logic. There are billions of stars in our galaxy similar to the Sun. Many of these stars are billions of years older than Earth. Statistically, many of these stars should have Earth-like planets. If Earth is typical, some of these planets should have developed intelligent life. Some of those civilizations should have developed interstellar travel. Even with the slow pace of current envisioned star travel, the entire Milky Way galaxy could be completely traversed in a few million years. So given that the galaxy has been around for over 13 billion years, the aliens should have already visited us. They should be everywhere, and yet we see nothing. No radio signals, no giant megastructures around stars, no welcome to the neighborhood signs, just silence. There are a few ways to solve the Fermi paradox. 1. We are alone. Life is so incredibly rare, and the jump from single-celled sludge to building a rocket is so difficult that we are the only ones who have ever made it. 2. The Great Filter. This theory suggests that there is a hurdle that almost all civilizations hit and fail to pass. Maybe it's nuclear war, maybe it's climate change, maybe it's the invention of artificial intelligence that decides it doesn't like its creators. If the filter is ahead of us, we're in trouble. If the filter is behind us, meaning it's the development of complex cells, then we might be the first ones to the party. 3. They are here, but they're hiding. This is the zoo hypothesis. Perhaps the Earth is a protected wilderness area, and the UFOs we see are just the intergalactic version of a park ranger's jeep driving by to make sure the monkeys haven't set the forest on fire. 4. Space is just too big. The distances between stars are so vast that even for advanced civilizations, traveling between them is a massive undertaking that just isn't worth the effort. But regardless of which theory you subscribe to, the search for life has moved out of the realm of science fiction and into mainstream science. NASA recently appointed a director of UAP research. UAP, by the way, is the new UFO. It stands for Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. The military and NASA changed the name specifically to get rid of the alien stigma. They want pilots to feel comfortable reporting what they see without being laughed at. Today we are looking for life not by waiting for a saucer to land on the White House lawn, but looking at the atmospheres of distant planets with the James Webb Space Telescope. We're looking for biosignatures, gases like methane or oxygen that shouldn't be there unless there's something breathing. We're looking for technosignatures, signs of industrial pollution or artificial light on other worlds. So where does that leave us for the future? The future of the UFO, or UAP, is transparency. For decades, this subject was shrouded in secrecy, mostly because the military was trying to hide its own secret tech. But as sensor technology becomes ubiquitous, as everyone carries high-definition cameras in their pockets, and private companies launch their own satellite constellations, it's getting harder for anything to stay unidentified for long. We're entering an era of citizen science. Groups like the Galileo Project at Harvard are setting up high-resolution telescopes and sensors around the world to monitor the skies 24/7. They aren't looking for aliens, they're looking for data. Because at the end of the day, all a UFO is a data point that we can't fit into a graph yet. Maybe the Tic-Tac is a top secret American drone using transmedium propulsion that we won't see in the public sector for 50 years. Maybe it's a natural phenomenon involving plasma and electricity that we haven't discovered yet. Or maybe, just maybe, it's someone else. Whatever it is, the study of UFOs tells us more about ourselves than it does about the universe. It tells us about our need for mystery, our fear of the unknown, and our incredible capacity for misidentifying a weather balloon at sunset. It reminds us that we are living on a tiny blue marble in a very large, very dark, and very quiet room, and it's only natural to look at the shadows on the wall and wonder if we are really here alone. So the next time you see a light in the night sky that doesn't seem to belong, don't jump to conclusions. It might be a bird, it might be a plane, it might be a top secret spy satellite, or it might just be the planet Venus doing its best to look suspicious. But until you know for sure, it's a UFO. And that's okay. The universe is a lot more interesting when there are still things left to identify. Thanks for watching What Is. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the unidentified, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel and ensures you won't miss our next video, where we break down something else you've always wondered about. Have you ever seen something in the sky you couldn't explain? Tell us your story in the comments below, but keep it factual, please. We'll see you in the next one. Keep looking up.